Have you ever lost something so precious you'd do anything to get it back? For me, it wasn't just an object. It was a piece of my heart. A locket my grandmother gave me before she passed away. Losing it felt like losing her all over again. But how I got it back, well, that's a story that changed my life and made me question everything I thought I knew about the world. It all started on what was supposed to be a simple, peaceful camping trip deep in the Redwood National Park. I go there every year. It's my sanctuary, a place to disconnect from the noise of the city and reconnect with nature and with her memory. The giant trees always made me feel small, but in a good way, like my problems were tiny in the grand scheme of things. This year, though a heavy sadness followed me into the woods, it had been a tough year, and I felt more lost than ever. I set up my tent near a familiar creek, the sound of the water usually so calming. I reached for the silver locket I always wore, a habit I had whenever I felt anxious. My fingers met bare skin. Panic surged through me, cold and sharp. I frantically searched my pockets, my backpack, the tent floor. Nothing. I must have dropped it on the trail. My peaceful retreat instantly turned into a desperate search. I retraced my steps for hours, my eyes scanning every inch of the forest floor, my heart pounding in my chest. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, but I barely noticed. The beautiful woods now felt vast and menacing. The locket was a tiny silver needle in a giant green haystack. Defeated, I stumbled back to my campsite as darkness fell. I sat by the unlit fire pit, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was my last physical link to her. Inside was a tiny, faded picture of us together, her arm around my shoulder, both of us smiling. Losing it felt like a final, cruel severing of our bond. I cried until I had no tears left, eventually falling into an exhausted, restless sleep. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy heart, the reality of the loss hitting me all over again. I decided to pack up and leave. The forest had lost its magic. As I was stuffing my sleeping bag into its sack, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. Something was different. On top of a large Muscovite boulder near my tent, something was glinting in the morning sun. My heart skipped a beat. I walked closer, cautious but hopeful. There, placed deliberately in the center of the rock, was my locket. It was unmistakable. The chain was neatly coiled around the silver oval. I snatched it up, relief washing over me in a tidal wave. I clutched it to my chest, my hands trembling. But then, the questions started flooding in. How did it get here? I had searched this exact area dozens of times yesterday. There's no way I missed it. The trail was at least a mile away. It couldn't have just appeared. Someone must have found it and returned it. But who? I hadn't seen another soul since I arrived. The park was practically deserted this time of year. That's when I saw it. Next to the boulder, pressed into the soft, damp earth, was a footprint. And it was huge. I'm a size 10, and this print dwarfed my own foot. It was long, wide, and distinctly humanoid, but not human. The toes were thick and splayed. The arch was low, and the sheer depth of the impression suggested immense weight. My blood ran cold. I had heard the stories, of course, the local legends of the Sasquatch, the gentle giants of the forest. I'd always dismissed them as campfire tales. But looking at this print, a wild, unbelievable idea started to form in my mind. Could it be? Could a Bigfoot have found my locket? The thought was absurd, yet the evidence was right in front of me. The impossibly placed locket, the colossal footprint, the complete absence of any other people. I stood there for a long time, just staring at the print, the locket warm in my hand. Then I noticed something else, something I almost missed. Next to the massive footprint were a few small, carefully arranged pine cones and a single, vibrant red wildflower. It wasn't random. It was a placement, a gesture. It felt like a gift, an offering of comfort. Suddenly, my fear was replaced by a profound sense of awe and gratitude. Gratitude. I thought about the night before, how I had sat right here, openly sobbing, my grief raw and exposed. Had something been watching me? Listening, not with malice, but with a kind of quiet empathy. The idea that this creature, this being from myths and legends, had witnessed my pain and not only found my precious locket, but returned it, was overwhelming. It wasn't just about finding my locket anymore. It was about the act of kindness behind it. This mysterious being hadn't just returned an object. It had returned a piece of my hope. The pine cones and the flower. It was like a message, a silent communication from one living being to another, transcending language and species. It was a gesture that said, "I see your sadness. Primera Honhurstand." It was a lesson in empathy from the most unexpected teacher imaginable. In our world, we're so disconnected. We hide our pain. We build walls. We often walk right past the suffering of others. But out here, in the heart of the ancient woods, a creature I could uneven prove existed showed me more compassion than I'd experienced in years. It reminded me that we're not as alone as we think, and that kindness can be found in the most mysterious of places. I never saw who, or what, left the locket. I packed up my camp, but this time the forest felt different again. Not menacing, and not just peaceful. It felt alive, sacred, full of secrets and a deep, ancient wisdom. I left the pine cones and the wildflower on the rock, a silent thank you to my mysterious benefactor. Driving away from the park, I kept glancing at the locket hanging around my neck. It was more than just a memento of my grandmother now. It was a reminder of an impossible encounter. A reminder that the world is far more magical and mysterious than we can ever imagine. And most importantly, it was a reminder that kindness is a universal language, spoken not just by humans, but perhaps by everything that shares this beautiful, wild planet. I still don't have proof. I have no photo, no video, just a story that sounds unbelievable. But I know what happened, and that experience left me with a lesson I'll carry for the rest of my life. Look for the kindness. It's all around us, even when it comes from a shadow in the woods. Sometimes, the greatest gifts don't come in boxers. They come in the form of a small, silver locket placed on a mossy rock. A gesture of compassion from a being I was never meant to see. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever had an experience that you just can't explain, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the edge of our known world. Stay curious, everyone.